Hi, welcome to the Drama-Free Living Podcast with Dennis and Lisa McIntee, and we're concluding this idea about stress, what to do with it, why it's good, when it's a superpower. We talked about hacks, and this should be an interesting one today, Lisa.
Absolutely. So this is our fourth podcast on stress. And if you're interested in hacks on stress or why stress is really good or just the difference between mentors and coaches and therapists and trusted allies and why it's important to have a trusted ally, how do you develop a trusted ally, go back and listen to the most recent 3 podcasts because we really set a huge foundation on stress and how to be healthy with your stress because we all need stress. Stress is important in our lives. It helps us just get things done.
Yeah.
But it can also just wipe us out if we don't deal with it well.
It's part of why we created the Stress Converter. So if you have not downloaded the Stress Converter, it's completely free. We're going to put a link there in the show notes, but you can download it. It is a 5-step quick thinking tool that allows you to take any concern, any kind of concern,
anything
personal,
that's stressing you out,
personal or professional, and how to walk it through and actually use a concern to create creativity. Because you can transform concerns to creativity. In this way, stress is a good thing.
Yeah. Can you just go into the Stress Converter briefly?
Yeah. So it's a 5-part, and you ask yourself, okay, because here's what's happening with stress is that concerns are going higher and confidence is lowering, right? Whenever you're feeling stressed, your concerns are elevated, your confidence is lowering, and you want to start to equalize them up, right? So the first question is simply like, well, what's stressing you? And just name the stress. It's this situation, this circumstance. And then you want to ask, why is it stressful? And this, you want to really get the energy, okay? Really kind of, because you need the energy to push through the next 2 things, which is simply, okay, what's one way I can lower the concern? Like, how can I lower the concern?
What's something I can do?
What's something I can do to lower the concern? And then what's something that I can do to raise my confidence? And then the very last question is like, what's one thing you can do right now? And so you want to lower the concern and you want to increase the confidence. And not that the concerns are going to totally leave. That's not the goal. But it's when this gap is so big, the bigger the gap, the bigger the stress. And you just want to get them to equal. Because it's almost I need a positive and I need a negative together gives this electric charge. And in this way, stress becomes good. And so you lower concern, increase confidence, and boom, what you're going to find is you're going to convert that concern into an action, into creativity, and you're going to just start to see changes in your life. It actually becomes a superpower for you.
Absolutely. You can download the PDF, and utilize it in your journal. You can utilize it for your journal prompts. I have it on my Notability that I just pull up and I can fill it in. And it's just kind of a cheat to help you organize your thoughts and ideas on what the heck is going on and why is it bothering me so much.
Yeah. So it's a cheat from transforming concern, and you just transform it into creativity, and boom, you're off to the races. So, Lisa, this last one.
I love that. Boom, you're off to the races.
Boom, you're off to the races.
Let's do it.
Our work is done here. Okay. But this episode, we want to kind of cover, because this is an interesting, it's really, we want to talk to managers, leaders, and people that are leading teams but you could do it with your personal relationships too.
Right.
It really applies across the board. Maybe.
We were talking about this, and we were talking about, so who is the audience? Who is the subjective? So it can be with someone that's leading a team. Mm-hmm. It could be someone that's a COO and you've got all of these employees that are underneath you. Yeah. You could be leading your family and you've got people that look to you and are responsible to you. My sister's an educator, so she deals with students on a daily basis. You can utilize this with your students to help them get the most out of the knowledge that you're providing. My other sister, she's a nurse, and she deals with she's NICU nurse, so she takes care of the infants, but she deals with the families.
Yep.
And the families are not the patients, but the families are the ones she deals with. And so this is just some ideas that you can utilize to recognize, hey, this is how I can be a support to these people that are in my sphere.
Yeah. And so today we want to talk about how do you recognize stress in others, either your team or people around you, and what can you do to help them?
Right.
So how do you go out and you recognize it? And really, especially if you're leading a team, right, it's like all about enhancing morale. Mm-hmm. And reducing turnover. How many times do people, they're under stress and they don't communicate it, we don't address it, they just leave.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I need someplace that's a little bit calmer or a little bit like not as stressful.
And so in my sister's situation where they've got, she's taking care of babies in the NICU and all of a sudden the parents just leave.
Yeah.
And they know the nurses are going to take care of the babies, but they just check out because they can't handle the stress. And so being able to recognize this and help them through it and help them re-engage is super powerful.
Yeah, and you also want to think about like how can we increase collaboration, right? Because when it's very stressful, people are not very collaborative, right? They're not engaged. It can destroy culture. Listen, it can destroy productivity and not hitting deadlines and goals, and even go so far as to like really affect customers and your clients. Because how many times have I dealt with a frontline employee that was kind of rude? Like we have a particular employee, and we even think about it every time we show up at American Airlines. Right, we fly out of out of Greenville, Spartanburg, and there's a particular employee that we never, because she's never been nice, she's never been kind, and but I also wonder like how much stress is she under? Because I kind of see her and she's like always frazzled and and she just very short,
Right.
and I think that's really just a reflection of the stress she's under.
Yeah.
Right, so it affects so many areas. So listen,
because that she didn't get into this job to just be biting people's heads off and unkind and not a good representation. Yeah.
Yeah, but every time we see her, she bites our heads off. It's very interesting. And as a leader and as a manager, it's this whole idea of whatever you don't address, you endorse. So if you see it in your team and you see it in your relationships, get it out in the open, right? Have these conversations because, some people, they don't telegraph really well. Right. Others do, but some don't, right? And you can see changes like in their interaction, like maybe they're, they work well with a team and a group and they're always gregarious and, the next day they're off working by themselves and got their door shut and not talking to anybody and
kind of isolating themselves.
Right. And you got to look and go, okay, what's changed here? So really kind of looking out, because some people don't telegraph well. So we want to give you some ways because, you do have some people that do telegraph well. That does tend to happen, right? But
some people telegraph too well.
Yeah. But, so we want to kind of look at and just almost become a real good student of people and become a good student of your teams. One thing, I think the key thing really to look at is, first of all, changes in behavior.
You're right.
Right. So, noticeable changes in behavior. It could be irritability. Yeah. Right. It could be mood swings. It could be a decrease in social interaction because here's the thing about behavior. Behavior is always telling me a story. I mean, at the end of the day, behavior is the solution. Behavior is a solution for something going on the inside, right? We've used the iceberg concept a lot in our trainings, and I'm sure we're not even going to put it up on the screen, but I'm sure you've seen it before. Right, where the tip of the iceberg is behavior, and underneath the iceberg, the real iceberg underneath the water is how you feel, how you think, what you believe, and those are the things that are driving behavior. So almost look at it, behavior is just a symptom of something going on underneath. So when people have changes in behavior, you want to step back and go, okay, what's going on? Right. Especially when it's abnormal behavior.
Because our life is completely interconnected.
Absolutely.
And so it could be stresses at work. It could be stresses maybe from a different team, part of the work. It could be stresses at home. It could be financial stresses. There's all different kinds of stressors. And when we begin to have that many different stressors piled up, it's going to show up in our behavior.
Yeah. And so really just almost become a student of people. And then also decline in performance kind of goes hand in hand with it. Right. So like maybe there's a decline in like work performance or productivity or missing deadlines, right? Lower quality of work. But it's typically a sign, especially if they typically have a high level of work and then you've noticed it's a lower level of work. Listen, don't just let this stuff slide. I mean, get it out in the open. Go, okay, there's something else going on here. And what can I do to help them? Now, listen, what we're not telling you is we're not telling you to be everybody's therapist or to go be a life coach to the people around you. But we just want you to like step out and look at this. And then we're going to give you some practical strategies just every day that you can do with it.
Absolutely. Because if you are responsible for your team and you're responsible, these are all people that are in your sphere and you are doing life together for a common good. So we've got the different people that are on our team and we're working together. And so if they're under some stress, it really benefits us to be able to recognize it so we can either A, lighten their load, or maybe B, give them some grace, or just know that they need a little bit of flex. And when we can do that, we can adapt together. And then once that stress level is a little bit lowered and they can ramp back up, because nobody wants to be judged for themselves on their worst day.
Very good.
And we all
Yeah.
have bad days.
Yeah. How many times do we judge ourselves on our best days, and we judge others on their worst days?
Right.
Right. And then we have this, this gap. And, sometimes like, man, I'm not as good as I really think I am. And, they're not really as bad as I think they are.
Absolutely.
You know?
So another symptom of stress would be physical. So they could be health issues, fatigue, muscle tension, gastrointestinal issues, changes in sleep patterns. When you notice that someone that you work with, someone that works for you, someone that you collaborate with, they're starting to maybe get sick more often, or they're coming in tired, it just kind of gives you an idea of, hey, this person is probably under a little bit of stress.
Yeah.
And whether it's work stress or personal stress, whatever the stress is, you can be a little bit more aware and respond a little bit better. Now, we had an employee, this is several years ago, and they were getting sick pretty often.
Oh, right.
And there was just always something, and they would be sick, and then they would be sick again, and they would be sick again. And it was really hard, and they felt really bad about being sick. There wasn't really anything that they could do about it.
Yeah.
Because their physically their body couldn't handle the sicknesses that was coming their way. But what we also knew was they were going through some tremendous pressure on their personal lives.
Yeah.
And we knew that it was just a season in their personal life that they were going through some very difficult things. And because of that, we weren't surprised that there was a little bit more sickness, that there was a little bit more having to check out. And maybe there were a few things that were dropped. But we talk about glass balls, and we talk about
Rubber balls.
And the glass balls, we're all juggling balls. And we're all juggling. Some of our balls are glass balls and some of our balls are rubber balls. And glass balls could be certain clients that are pivotal in your business. And rubber balls could be the paper that needs to be ordered and to be able to have to print things. They're different levels of deficit if that ball drops. Now, as you're juggling and a glass ball drops, it shatters and you can't put it back together. But as you're juggling and a rubber ball drops, it's okay. It's just a hiccup along the way, and you can pick it up and you can go back on. And we had a conversation with this person. We said, we get it, and try to feel better. Do what you can. Just don't let the glass balls drop. And if there's something that you need to pass off and someone else can take it. Just do what you can to get better, and we'll support you during this time of, turmoil in your personal life.
Yeah. And I think we do need to say, like Lisa, there's a balance to this, right? So,
Absolutely.
It says people are under stress, and we're not saying don't address it, just let it go on. And right, there's a balance to this, but I think, what really helps people, and we're going to get into some strategies, is like, what do you do with it, right? So, so these are things to look for, and we're not saying don't address it, like increased absenteeism. Right?
You have to
gotta address
that.
it, right? But you just want to notice it is one. What's another one, Lisa?
Absolutely. Expressions of overwhelm.
Okay.
Just that frustration, vocalizing their challenges and their frustrations that they're facing.
Yeah.
More than normal, but just with a very frustrated tone.
Yeah. Decrease in engagement, right? That maybe a decline in enthusiasm, or I was combining influence and enthusiasm all together there in one
you
word,
could
right?
create a new word that way.
I totally could, right? So a decrease in engagement, they're not as excited as they once were. It can be a sign they're dealing with stress.
And then a change in appearance. When people start coming in and they're
not shaving.
They're not shaving, or they just look really tired. Their grooming habits have declined, or even what they're wearing.
Yeah.
Maybe they're a little bit rumpled, or just these indications that their personal care is not being attended to the level that they normally do.
Yeah, increasing complaints or even negativity, right? Kind of this uptick in complaints or pessimism. It can be a sign that team members are under stress, and really that they're under stress. What I like to say is that when they tend to create, they don't know what to do with the energy, right? Because you can complain or create, you just can't do both. So I feel the energy, and I don't know what to do with it. I feel the stress. Maybe I haven't had the stress converter. I don't know what to do with it. So the only thing I know what to do with that energy is complain.
Right.
And so it can tend to be like a sign of like, hey, that might be a little bit like overwhelm and stress on them.
Yeah, and then another symptom of someone on your team or someone in your sphere being under stress would be social withdrawal.
Okay.
So someone that was previously engaged before, and then you start noticing that they're distancing or they've withdrawn. That's a pretty good sign of stress. Now that is withdrawing or kind of pulling in is a healthy way to handle stress, being able to just pull back as long as you're not letting those glass balls drop. But when we observe that, so when I observe someone on our team that's just kind of withdrawing, I want to just kind of check in a little bit and say, hey, how are things going? I've noticed you've been a little quiet lately, or, is everything okay? Is there anything I can do to help? And it's when you see a change in their level of engagement.
Yeah. So Lisa, so we look out and we see team members and go, wow, they might be under stress. Like, okay, well, what do we do? Right? Because I'm not a therapist, right? I'm not a life coach. It's like but there are some things just as human beings and as leaders, managers, or maybe you're dealing with students, there are some things that you can do. And so one thing is really this whole idea of like open communication and really kind of vocalizing the issue. And I think this kind of like creates an emotional release, right? It's like whatever stays in the dark grows. But when you can bring it out into the light and have a conversation, right? So verbalizing your feelings, it really allows for this emotional release. And people need safe spaces to do that. So like we talked about in the last podcast, one thing I'm working on over the last week is really how do I become like more of a safe place for people? So speaking about your stressors, they kind of provide this outlet and people need that safe space. And then they need to be validated for, yep, I get it. It's a very stressful time, right? Yes, you have a lot on your plate. So kind of talking about your concerns and acknowledging them and vocalizing them and makes them feel like, hey, I'm valid as a person.
Absolutely. And active listening is being part of that.
Yeah.
Is being an active listener, and you just let them know, hey, if you need to talk about it, right. I'm here. I'm here to listen. And an active listener is just really paying attention to what they say without trying to fix it, without trying to shame or blame or judge them, but just being there so they know they've got an ear and they can just say it.
Yeah, and it allows people really to have clarity, right? You kind of vocalize the issues and it allows you to organize your thoughts and then really get perspective because sometimes it's not a big deal. I mean, we've at times had team members who are really stressed out because it's like, oh my gosh, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. And I just sit down with this team member and say, listen, who decides if it's perfect?
Right.
And they literally didn't have an answer. I said, you know who decides? We decide. And to us, it's perfect. She goes, yeah, but it's perfect. And so sometimes it just eliminated some of that stress because it was a different perspective. This team member thought it had to be a certain way, in their brain for it to be perfect. And just really getting that perspective really helped this person sort of eliminate and alleviate some of the stress. So there are things as individuals, as educators and managers and leaders and nurses and really however you relate to people and deal with people, even kids and family members, right? There are some things that you can do that really kind of help this.
Absolutely. And one of those is empathy, demonstrating empathy to those people that are in your sphere and understanding and validating their feelings.
Yeah.
And, of course you feel that way. I mean, that's how you would feel if your baby is in the NICU and that's how a lot of the parents feel. And I understand it's a tough position to be in. And so just providing empathy is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, provide resources, right? Listen, it's a reason why we created the Stress Converter is we wanted that to be a resource for you.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't need it, but click the link. We've got it there for you, and just download it and share it with your team. Say, here's a resource. Here, why don't you walk through this particular tool?
Help.
Right, it might help. The stress hacks that we went through in a previous podcast. Those are just resources. So there's plenty of resources. You don't have to be the resource as the leader. You just have to know the resource and encourage the resource.
Yeah. Hey, I've got something. I don't know if it would help or not, but take a look at it. And if it helps, let me know, because then I'll know to recommend it to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And setting realistic expectations.
I think this is really helpful.
That's a pretty big deal. Ensuring that expectations are clear, that they're achievable, that they're realistic. Unrealistic expectations, they contribute to stress. So if you have a team member that's stressed, just go through and look at the expectations that you've set out for that team member or for that project, because it's crucial to set those achievable goals and deadlines and not unduly add stress to your team because what you've even decided you're doing is not reasonable.
Well, and sometimes people have unrealistic expectations that you've never created.
That's true.
I mean, that's happened with us where, they thought it had to be done like right now. And we had to come back and go, no, that was an idea that we had. Let's get it done in the next month. And just really, I think we can help people with their expectations. And then, I think as leaders and people, we have to encourage work-life balance.
Yeah.
Right? There is this balance between you need a chance to rejuvenate and recuperate. And it's like stretching a rubber band. You keep stretching the rubber band and it'll eventually break. But the reason the rubber band stretches even further is it has an ability to contract. So helping people contract, one thing, and, so I've had to kind of deal with this is on my free time, I really want it to be free. Right. And sometimes it irritates me when other people on our team have free time, but they come back to work or they check email. And I'm not making a judgment because sometimes that works better for people, but a little bit I'm sad because I want to enjoy your work-life balance as much as I enjoy mine.
And that's a really good example because you are prescribing what their work-life balance should look like when it's actually what your work-life balance, what you want it to look like. Yeah. And they need to be masters and control over their own work-life balance. And we actually had a whole 4-series podcast on encouraging work-life balance. Yeah. It was the series right before this one. I think it was episodes 151 through 154.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And
we'll put it in the show notes.
All about work-life balance and just the value of it, how to achieve it. Just super amazing. Right.
And we went through stress management techniques. So go back to
back
to the hacks, right? There's a lot of different stress management techniques that are available. That's a great podcast to share with people. If they're under stress, go back and share with them the stress hacks.
Yeah. What do you remember off the top of your head? What are a couple of your favorite stress hacks?
Car wash. Go to the car wash.
Okay. No, you're going to have to explain that one.
Okay. Well, go back and listen to it. Okay. I think one of my favorite is exercise.
Yeah.
Right. One of my favorites is exercise and is change of scenery. Just getting different perspectives. What about you? What was favorite hack?
One of my favorite stress hacks that's really quick is the breathing technique because you can take 1 or 2 minutes and you can do it anywhere. Just that breathing technique of 4-7-8. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, breathe out through your mouth for 8 counts. And it doesn't matter where you're at unless you're public speaking, because then obviously there will be a lull. You don't do it in front of a group,
right?
Yeah.
Or maybe doing it on the podcast right now.
I could do it right now, but there would definitely be a lull and we'd have to cut it out. Right. So that's one of my favorites because it's really quick and it's a stress hack to just lower those cortisols quickly. And then another one is just doing happy things like reading books or listening to happy music or doing a dance off or whatever. And
Love it.
Just kind of fun.
Yeah. Dance off your stress.
Dance off your stress.
There it is. Problem solving, right? So kind of working collaboratively to identify solutions. I mean, really step in and help people problem solve.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing you can kind of ask sometimes when people are in stress is, would you like support or would you like a solution? And you never want to give a solution if people just need support.
Right.
But if they want a solution, then you can step in.
I'm your man.
Right. I can step in. We can problem solve. But if you just need support and need containment and a safe place to talk, we can talk for a little bit through this. Right. So do you need support or solution? And if they say solution, man, go for it, right? Just go for it and just, help them problem solve.
Absolutely. And then delegating effectively.
Effectively is a key word.
Effectively. Yeah, not dumping, because there is a
Right.
difference between dumping
Yeah.
and delegating.
Yeah.
But when you're under stress, or when you see a team member that's under stress, just encouraging them, hey, let's look at what you've got on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
And find out what you can delegate and who would be a good person to delegate it to. And so distributing it evenly among team members that maybe have a little bit more capacity, and avoid overloading any particular individual, but just kind of spreading that load across. And delegating tasks appropriately is a key thing to prevent burnout.
Yeah, really kind of delegate according to like your gifting and who you are as a person. And there's so much on that. We won't even open.
There's
we won't
so
even
much
open
on that.
the
We're
door
not
to
going to
that,
crack
right?
that open, because we will get lost in the hole.
And 2 hours later, we're still talking about it. Recognize and celebrate achievements. I think like this whole idea of people feeling a sense of progress, people feeling like, hey, we're winning, right? It boosts morale.
Absolutely.
And many times, like I don't feel motivated because I am not looking back and measuring backwards and realizing what some of the wins are.
Absolutely. And then another thing that you can do when you've got team members that are under stress is just encouraging team support. And it's fostering a sense of camaraderie within the team. And this is something that can be done when you're in the non-stress moments, when things are a little bit slower in your company or in your organization, when you're not at peak performance time, because we all have high and low seasons. Yeah. And it just encouraging team members to bond with each other, and even having a lunch. We've got one of our clients that they do a monthly cookout with their team, and they bring food in, and they all eat for lunch and just to have a good time and enjoy. And we've got other clients that they do things similar than that, but it's a way to just encourage the interaction amongst each other, and creating those strong bonds helps us navigate through situations effectively with each other.
Yeah, it's almost like, who's in your foxhole, right? Because a little bit, if you just think through this, like, who's there to support you, encourage you. Was that a bad analogy?
No, that was
you
great.
Have such a smirk.
I never know what's going to come out of your mouth, but that's really good. Who's in your foxhole?
Well, I just finished watching Pacific, right on HBO.
Oh, that makes so much
right?
sense.
And so it's like this 8-part series. We'll put a link in the show notes. You'll love it, right? Just like Band of Brothers. But I was just thinking about, my brain just went there, like, who's in your foxhole? Well, we'll leave it at that. That could be another book down the road. Another one is regular check-ins.
Absolutely.
Checking in with your team, right? Having regular one-on-ones. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that we do is every week with team members, we just have one-on-ones. And what's helped even more is it's their responsibility to get on our schedule, not us going out. And we've sort of put that responsibility, but it's a time for them to talk about whatever they would like to talk about.
And then
right?
If we have
personal or professional, and we just let them
and then
share.
If we have a few things, then we'll bring that up at the end. And while it is their responsibility, we do keep an eye on it, and we think, okay, so we haven't seen this particular team member hasn't met up with us, and that can also be a stress indicator.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if they start to go dark on you when we're having one-on-ones, then it's like, okay, either the one-on-one is not encouraging them the way we designed it to, or they're having some stress. And it's a way to recognize, okay, I think I need to give them a little bit more time.
Yeah, good. And then the last one is really providing training and skill development, right? Because dealing with stress is actually a skill. It's why we created the Stress Converter. It's like, here's a 5-step process that you can get really skilled in transforming concerns and stress into creativity and confidence.
And also, if you're doing a job and you're not properly trained for it, and your skills are not properly developed for it to do well, depending on what your personality is. Some personalities, like you, Dennis, you might not feel confident in it, but you're just going to wing it and do the best you can. Others, like myself, if I step into it and I don't feel confident, I'm going to be a little bit more hesitant, and it'll probably create a little bit more stress in my life, because I like to do things well and thoroughly, and you're okay just getting the job done, and it's what makes you great. And it's also what makes me great, and it's just a differentiation.
It's a different way
It's a different way, and so
work.
Making sure that the people around us are trained for the areas that they need.
Yeah, that's good, Lisa. I think for me, as I'm kind of thinking through this, I need to become more aware out with my relationships. Like, Are they under stress? Like, kind of like really look at them, because sometimes they get so consumed with me and just the goals and the projects and this, and we move from project to project and we're always so busy. I think I just need to kind of step back and really take an honest look at people and look at some of these indicators and just sort of ask myself, well, I wonder how much stress they are under. And then what are some things that I can do to alleviate that? What for you was a big takeaway?
My big takeaway is that you have discovered that you need to maybe be a little more aware of the team that's around us and when they're under stress and what's going on. And so you can step up and
so I can make it
support.
more, by golly, make it more stressful. Here's another idea. Here's another project. Here's another deadline to hit.
No, I love this idea of just coming alongside our team, because really we're all in this life together. And some of us are bosses and higher ups, and some of us are managers, and some of us, we're all in different roles, but we're all just trying to do life. And when we can support each other and be attuned to each other, it just makes life so much more fun and enjoyable and exciting. And we can be so much more productive together than we can be alone.
Yeah, this has been great, really kind of unpacking stress and really looking at it different ways. If you have not downloaded the Stress Converter, it's there. There's a link in the show notes. You can have it for free and
use it and try to help it in your journaling or in your quiet time. Just figure out how you can take something that's concerning you, that's causing you stress, and unpack it and turn it for good.
Yeah, make it a superpower. Stress is your superpower. All right, we will see you next time on the Drama Free Living Podcast.